Continuing our reading of Dallas Pimiento. This is Dallas Pimiento, Book 2, I'm Bronco 2. A detergent for John Wayne. The leather pants emerged from the washing machine pitted with holes. A detergent for John Wayne, commented Fancy dryly. What happened to the pants? Asked the small boy present at the demonstration. That's what happened, a certain teacher from my past snorted angrily. The boy backed away, cowed by the cow, but his would not be a repeat of my experience. I emerged from the ethereal pocket vaporizer at the back of the washing machine. Hold on a second, you, I growled thickly, still dizzy from the dimensional transference. I was seeing double at first, but I carried on. The kid wasn't asking a stupid question, I told the teacher. He's asking why the strong detergent ate away at the pants. He wants to know how that happens. I don't know how that happens, the woman, aged almost beyond recognition, replied testily. I wouldn't have known her if I'd passed her on the street, though I had been looking for her for nearly 20 years. Then why didn't you just tell the boy that instead of snapping at him so angrily? Who are you? She looked at me up and down. He came out of the machine, Fancy was astonished. Is that a standard option on this model? She asked me, though I didn't at first realize it. What? I said after a pause. I turned to this little short-haired woman irritably. How should I know, woman? I'm not the Maytag man. What's Maytag? The little boy asked. Him I would indulge. I knelt down. Maytag is a brand of washing machines. The Maytag man was a character used in advertising that brand. What did he do? He sat around waiting for the washing machines to break. Why? Christ, kid, I don't know. I haven't got time to... I was interrupted by a knock on the door of the flimsy cardboard set. My pants washed yet? The Duke asked, a towel around his waist. Edward, the shoe salesman of Peruvian extraction. If you really want to impress a girl, Edward advised, you get yourself one of those Rolodex watches. Ah, said the new recruit. Another thing, if you get really drunk, you can fuck like a machine. I'll have to remember that. Yeah, I'm 22 now. My friends say I'm getting crotchety, set in my ways, but I guess that's the price you pay for maturity. I'm 17. Oh, you're still just a kid. You're lucky you're getting this good advice. The new kid, introduced to not only those eye-opening words, but also the details of the shoe trade, felt himself privileged, even while seeing everything with skepticism and humor. Although he would only work at the shoe store for 6 months, he would forever after carry with him the special memories of his days there. From time to time during the next 20 years, he would try to remember Edward's last name and fail, much to his regret. While reviewing the materials that went into the writing of this piece, I came across a lady's boot made of a leather-textured polymer in a box otherwise filled with commission slips. At first, I was little more than amused that such an ugly piece of footwear was actually considered marketable by the overlords of the Butler Shoe Group. Then, expecting the boot more closely, I had the good fortune to put my hand inside it. Inside, stuffed in one of those supposedly one-use-only footies barefoot women use to try on shoes, was a wad of cash. This is one more example of just how rewarding research can be. What are you going to spend your windfall on? My wife asked. She's not one of those television wives who demands that you do the right thing and turn in found items or search for the rightful owner. What do you think I should spend it on? I turned the question around. Reducing debt is always advisable. She does, however, bear a distinct similarity to some of those TV characters. I'm thinking of buying a Rolodex, I admitted. Eddie and the Reverend. It pains me to have to tell this story, not only because it is from a painful part of my life, but also because I have been hoping to get back into some stories from Tomatoville. The rules governing the writing of this book, however, are strict. I must follow their dictates. I was working for a temp agency while waiting to join the Navy. One of the jobs I was assigned during this time was ditch digger at a natural gas pumping station. The other two temps were two black guys named Eddie and the Reverend. Our job was to dig several trenches on the grounds of the facility. Each was to be about 5 feet deep and several hundred feet long. I did the majority of the digging, Eddie the next greatest amount, and the Reverend did the least. Eddie was about 10 years older than I. The Reverend was at least 20 years older. Apparently, he had actually been a preacher at several churches in the area, but always managed to get fired for improprieties with money, alcohol, and or women. He still had the gift, however, as he demonstrated while we were supposed to be working. He told many stories of his life in his deep, well-modulated voice. He would dig a little bit, then pause to communicate some further detail of his hardships, at which Eddie would giggle so much he would have to stop digging as well. I was too afraid of being fired to stop working. One day, as we were standing about waiting for the next task to be laid upon us, Eddie encouraged the Reverend to give me a taste of his full powers. The old man, leaning on a shovel, thereupon launched into an impromptu sermon about our place in the world. It sounded good enough, but after a minute or two, the Reverend stopped, obviously a little sickened. Perhaps bad memories or guilt made him stop, I don't know. On the last day of our assignment, Eddie and the Reverend, who drove together in a Monte Carlo, left first. I followed behind. Not 2 miles down the road they ran out of gas, and I was forced to give them rides back to their homes at opposite ends of town. My timid requests for gas money were met with promises of future repayment. Of course, nothing came of that. About a month later, however, I saw the Reverend downtown. I approached him and identified myself. He didn't recognize me at first. Before I could remind him of the debt he owed me, he asked me for $10. Coma Commando. Coma Commando, the latest offering from Tomatoville's own local ramshackle version of the Cartoon Network, was lambasted immediately upon its first appearance as a meaningless, cheaply produced show actively malignant to the minds of children. What these critics fail to understand, said Dallas Pimiento to an acquaintance, is that, first of all, the show is not specifically for children, and secondly, Coma Commando is a wonderful example of minimalism, subtlety, and the triumph of aesthetic values over didacticism. You like the show's graphics, the acquaintance replied knowingly. Of course, I'm a painter. The show concerned the adventures of Coma Commando, a bizarrely uniformed man whose reality seemed to consist of dreams within dreams. Was he actually in a coma? This was never answered within the lifetime of the show. It was cancelled after 1 season. Yet another great show gone to the shallow minds of the masses, Pimiento complained to Miss O'Crea during his first visit to her house. Yes, but surely you don't watch TV all that much, she questioned. No, Pimiento assured her, but for a show like that, I was willing to make an exception. Imagine, a beautifully rendered cartoon in which very little happens. No violence, just endless mystery. No violence? Then why is it called Coma Commando? Miss O'Crea sat beside Pimento's gift of a painting, which he had professed such delight with. Well, obviously it sounded good. I guess they wanted to attract a bigger audience. When the visit was over and Pimiento was walking away from the lady's house, he began the misgivings. Should he have spent the entire time talking about a cartoon? Did Miss O'Crea really like the painting? Had he interrupted her in the middle of something? There had been curious sounds coming from further within the house. He needn't have worried. 2 days later he received a note from Miss O'Crea inviting him to a gathering at her house in a week's time. Gratoodles. Gratoodles, the dog, turned loose in the peach orchards outside the old city gate, came across the dead body of a man. Although the dead man's face was unrecognizable from decay, the image on his t-shirt was still clearly legible. To the dog it meant nothing, but to a fan of the Dodge Tyner Knuckle Dragger airlift, it would have immediately brought to mind the phrase, "Sherbert disaster," for the image was that of macrocephalic Goose Rampant, a character from the show. How we laughed at this ridiculous character, and how highly anticipated were his appearances, though they weren't that many. It was wise of the geniuses behind the show. Dodge Tyner was a fictitious character embodying its creator's ethos to limit macrocephalic Goose Rampant's appearances, thereby ensuring cult-like appreciation. It is so disappointing for a fan to have something initially likable run into the ground in the search for a wider audience. It is equally disappointing to have something one is a fan of achieve a wider audience. The opposite of microcephalic is hydrocephalic, to my way of thinking, because the mentioning of either word brings to mind the other. Speaking of microcephalic Goose Rampant, a comic figure, makes me think of a hydrocephalic boy whose photograph I once saw. The tragic aspects, for of course they are tragic, of this figure are that he was, as far as I know, confined to his bed, but his parents had him dressed as if to go outside and play. I can still remember the photograph, although I only saw it for a few seconds. It was passed around in a class I took by the professor, who said he had known the boy's parents. The boy is dressed in dark-colored pants and a striped long-sleeved shirt. He lay flat on his back. Thankfully, the details of his face were obscured. His enormous head was all too visible. I started this piece intent on providing you with some light-hearted trivia, but my associative memories, undeniable, have led me to feelings I cannot shake off. I imagine the love of the parents for their doomed child. He died in his late teens, so I was told. I imagine the love of the child for his parents. Nothing to do but lie there and suffer without understanding why. Suffering on both sides of the relationship. The dog Gratoodles can remain lost among the peach trees for all I care. Consult a physician. Dallas Pimiento had been experiencing peculiar and disturbing symptoms lately, so he consulted a physician recommended by Angela O'Crea. "I'll give him a call to make sure you're seen immediately," Miss O'Crea offered. "Oh, you don't have to do that." Pimiento hated to think of the doctor's other patients being pushed back so that he could go first. They might hold it against him if they found out who he was. Miss O'Crea told him not to worry and made the call. 2 days later, Pimiento was given a series of tests at the offices of Dr. Mexican Birdling. Pimiento was not the kind of person who worries about the cost of medical procedures. His thoughts were unswervingly fixed on his impending invalidity, decrepitude, and death. "Describe your symptoms to me, Mr. Pimiento," Dr. Birdling instructed the visionary painter and former secret operative. "I feel that my brain, or different functions of my brain, are deteriorating." "Explain," Birdling said. "Elaborate." "For one thing, it's like I'm developing dyslexia." "Do you have any history of dyslexia?" "None. But it's not just that, it's my memory. I can remember long-term things fine, but short-term no. I lose my train of thought easily, and I can't remember what I was thinking about." "And this worries you?" Birdling tapped his open palm with a rubber mallet. "Yes. You do realize you're getting older, Mr. Pimiento. You're nearing 40. Pimiento sighed. "I hope coming to see you wasn't a waste of my time. Don't belittle my symptoms. I know my own brain. It's starting to break down. Little things around the periphery." Pimiento stopped talking and stared at the wall. He felt it hard to put into words what he was feeling. "Do you need painkillers?" "No, I'm not in pain." Pimiento was disgusted. He went home to await the results of the tests. Hanging. Pimiento attended the formal hanging of his monstrous triptych, Abandonment of the Cross, at the Tomatoville Civic Center, though his thoughts were elsewhere. He felt he should be at home, getting as much work done as possible before the end came. Miss O'Crea had insisted, however, and as she had been instrumental in getting the city to purchase and permanently display his painting, Pimiento knew he owed it to her to attend. "You realize this painting is anti-Christian, don't you?" Gary Gimbleton told the new mayor, Steve Wells. "I try to stay out of matters of artistic expression," Wells answered. He assumed an expression of concern as he listened to Gimbleton rave. Around them, the cocktail-laden invitees circulated warily, wondering at the mayor's interlocutor's strong words and whether they should intervene. Luckily for the mayor, a couple of his staff members hustled him away on the pretext of mayoral business. "The Christians are a minority here," Miss O'Crea told Pimiento when word came through the crowd of the Gimbleton in his complaint. "Most Tomatovillians belong to AMSOS. It's a kind of mental improvement organization." "Well, that's a relief," Pimiento said. "I thought we were about to have a little controversy." He had wondered at the ease with which the abandonment had been accepted. "Oh, the Christians still have some political power," Miss O'Crea was quick to add. "After all, they can control Christmas." "Why do you celebrate Christmas if you're not Christians?" Pimiento was puzzled. "Presents," Miss O'Crea explained. She introduced Pimiento to some of her friends. As he was congratulated by them, repeatedly asked, "Where do you get your ideas?" Gary Gimbleton approached. "Sir, you are a blasphemer," Gimbleton accused him. Please, Miss O'Crea interceded. "This is a very sick man, Mr. Gimbleton. He must be to paint such a blasphemous picture denying the saving power of the Christ cross Jesus. This is not art." Maturity's unpleasant side. Wetch Weiss came down from his attic and reported to his wife. "I think it's almost over," he said. "What makes you think so?" Treblaine was eating a big, soft pretzel with hot mustard. "That's Angela O'Crea's there. I saw her car. Her driver is talking with some other people. The mood seems to be somber." "Poor man," Treblaine wiped off her chin. "Poor man," Weiss repeated. "Why, he'll be famous. His paintings will be worth a fortune after he dies. What good will that do him?" "Well," Weiss pondered, "it's something. To exit this life knowing that you've achieved something, to know that your legacy is assured." "This life? Oh, Wetch, you don't believe there's another one, do you?" "It's just an expression, Treblaine." Weiss eyed the last bite of his wife's pretzel. "Mind you," he said, "if there was another life after this one—" "What?" Treblaine asked. "Well, it just makes you think. You need to grow up, Wetch. You've got a grown daughter who's more mature than you. I'm just speculating, idly." Next door, Miss O'Crea emerged from Pimento's house. Her eyes were downcast. Trent Fricker, the reporter from the Comet, called to her from the sidewalk. "Miss O'Crea, what has happened?" "Dallas Pimiento is dead," she answered. "It is the judgment of God Almighty," Gimbleton said when he read the news in the paper that afternoon. His companion, an automaton of limited mobility named Chris, looked up from his pretend meal of molded plastic food items and asked, "When you die, will that also be the judgment of Almighty God? I have been granted eternal life thanks to my Savior," Gimbleton snapped. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and start the next section. It's part 3. Tiny boat in an undersized sea. The sea, for such it was called by those who lived on the surrounding shore, except for old Tom Sleeker, he insisted on calling it his bathtub, was perhaps a half a mile wide. One morning in the last quarter of wretched spring, spirit-crushing May, when the heat of summer was first making its promise of discomfort and immobility known, a tiny boat was spotted out in the middle of the sea's supposedly unplumbed waters. "How'd that boat get out there?" Manfred asked as he sat on his rotting back porch, pissing away yet another chance to work on the play he had sworn to see performed on stage before he died. "Somebody put it out there," Antoine, standing to one side of Manfred's porch, postulated. "Never seen it before." Manfred made one last comment on the novelty before returning to his interrupted explanation to Antoine of how crackling dialogue is conjured up. On the opposite side of the sea, old Tom Sleeker, padding down to the wet side of his property, also noticed the tiny boat. He kept a compact telescope in the bucket with his bath things. He pulled it out of the bucket and trained it on the boat. "No one on board," he thought to himself. "Looks a little big for a toy. I hope nobody's trying to spy on me." He then took off his robe, hung it on a hook on a 2x4 set in the ground by the water, and entered the sea naked, towing the floating bucket behind him by a string. "Hell," Sleeker thought, "I've got my own tiny boat." The original tiny boat, an automated and partially sentient entity, noted the old man and his bucket, but moved on, heading towards the well-maintained dock at the edge of Mr. Knockmead's part of the shoreline. Waiting for him was Mr. Knockmead's wife, Andrella. As he steamed closer, the woman waved to him. "She is wearing the dress I bought her," said the boat to himself. As he pulled alongside the dock, his thoughts were on the days when, as a bipedal automaton working the mines, he had had the money to buy nice things for nice people. Be serious about your affectation. Talking in an exaggeratedly precise voice, dressed as a bookish young man in the year 1901 might have dressed, Henderson defended his mannerisms and appearance. Whatever else one might say, one must admit that, in the context of a historical perspective, I do not in the least give the impression of being effeminate. He fingered the miniature saxophone in his hands, and even as the others in the room assailed him with their cruel words, went so far as to put the end of it to his lips. "Henderson," Begley's voice cut through the others, "are you wearing lipstick? It's mother of pearl, an intriguing variation on plain white," Henderson answered, checking the little sack as his mouthpiece for smudges. "Let me at him!" Torbold pushed through the half-dozen concerned interlocutors crowded about Henderson in their old-fashioned school desks. Torbold punched his left hand twice, readying himself to deliver a beating. "No, Torbold, no!" Begley tried to stop the slump-shouldered brute. He started from his desk, but too late. Henderson, tilting his chin arrogantly upward, seemed to encourage any confrontation. As Torbold loomed over him, thrusting out the convex unity of his chest and abdomen, Henderson stabbed at the big man with nothing more than his stiffened forefinger. Torbold bent double with a cry. Henderson changed his stance, prepared should further action be necessary. "Don't do it, Henderson," Begley cried. "And why not?" Henderson demanded haughtily. "You goddamn fag," Torbold bellowed. He wrenched his head up, snorting like a bull trying to escape a nest of hornets. He swung furiously, but Henderson eluded the blow easily. "Why do you associate with this a bore?" Henderson asked the others, looking at them each in the eyes as he tripped his would-be attractor into a large globe behind him. "Henderson, don't you see the way your appearance provokes others?" Begley made one last effort to convince Henderson of his folly. One more. "Bean pod Wambro." "It certainly is a big pod," Charles admitted. He stood with his hands in his jacket pockets, his stance that of a less than enthused man. "Put your hand on it. Feel the surface," Dr. Poundsign, a rare female among the scientists, urged Charles. Charles sighed. "If I must," he said. His heavy college ring reflected the bright sun lamps overhead as he withdrew his hand. "Yes, it's warm," he said. He ran his hand down the side of the green and black mottled pod, as if admiring the lines of a sports car. And that's only partially from the sun lamps, Dr. Poundside informed him. It's mostly from the organism growing within. The organism, Charles repeated. He glanced at his palm somewhat, as a man who has never before shaken with the hands of a Negro does. His skin had not been discolored from the contact. Dr. Poundside, came a creaky voice from the door behind them. I didn't know we had a visitor. Charles turned to see an old, stooped-back man in a lab coat coming towards him. Yes, Dr. Fishmeat, this is Charles Wambro. He's the investor who's going to keep the laboratory running for another year. Dr. Poundside introduced Charles, who kept his dubious comments about the woman's words to himself. Mr. Wambro, this is Dr. Nils Fishmeat, the founder of this lab. A pleasure to meet you, sir, Charles said as he shook the old man's cold, soft hand. What do you think of our work, Mr. Wambro? Fishmeat asked, nodding at the canoe-sized pod. I think I'm afraid that once people find out that I've invested in your lab, they'll start calling me Bean Pod Wambro. Is this the only project you've got in development? At the moment, answered Fishmeat. You should have been here 6 months ago. We had robots and sentient puppets running all over the place. Wouldn't a sentient puppet be the same as a robot? Charles asked. Your financial investment can help to change all that, Dr. Poundside jumped in.